broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second webinar in the Joliot-Curie programme 2020 for early career academics, people doing postdocs who are aspiring to an academic career. The subject for today is you've got your first academic post, what next? Now that may seem a bit of a strange title because obviously what most of you listening are hoping for is to get that first academic post and then everything will be fine. Well, I think it's important, and I think it's important to get across to you that that's great. If you achieve that, fantastic and well done. But that's not necessarily the end of the story. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the joys and some of the tribulations of getting your first academic post. And I'm just going to show you who's on the panel today. I can move the slides on. There we go. My name is Julie Franklin. I'm one of the Career and Professional Development Advisors at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I'm actually responsible for running the Joliot-Curie programme for postdocs, more of which a little bit later. But I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Dr. Rianne Lord, who has experienced some of the joys and tribulations of academic life. So would you like to say hello, Rianne, and just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. So I'm Rianne. I'm from currently working at the University of East Anglia. I'm a lecturer in inorganic chemistry. So before this, I have had. So it's actually, even though it's called my first permanent academic post, this is actually my second. So my first academic post was at the University of Bradford. And before this, I studied at the University of Leeds for both my MChem and PhD. And then I went to Edinburgh for a postdoc and then got my first academic position. So a little bit about where I am currently.
Right, thank you very much, and a lot more from Rianne later, I'm pleased to say. Some of you may be familiar with the Joliot-Curie programme and some of you may not, so I thought it was worth just having a slide up there about what it's all about. The Joliot-Curie programme is a long-established programme now, which the MRSC takes responsibility for, but we can only do this with the help and support of the academic community, and we have some great friends of the Joliot-Curie programme, and Rianne is certainly one of those. Now, the Joliot-Curie programme is there especially to support diversity and inclusion in academia, and we run events and webinars. Obviously, events are a little bit on hold at the moment, but do watch this space because we're thinking of doing something online in 2021, and it's specifically to support postdocs in the chemical sciences who are aspiring to an independent career in academic research but maybe perceive some kind of obstacle or have experienced some sort of problems along the way. So we're very inclusive. The whole programme is very informal and very friendly. So if you enjoy this broadcast today, then I would encourage you to keep an eye on what else we're doing and encourage your colleagues to get involved as well. You don't have to be a member of the MRSC to come to the conference or to listen to these webinars. It is open for everybody. The programme is actually named for Rianne Joliot-Curie, who was a Nobel Prize winner for chemistry in 1935, jointly with her husband Frederick, for their work on artificial radioactivity. You can read a lot more about her. A few years ago, we did 175 Faces of Chemistry project, all of which are still up on our website, and you can see the link there. You can find out a lot more about Rianne Joliot-Curie and a lot of other very diverse faces of chemistry on that site there. Now, for this year, we're not having a conference for obvious reasons, but we are running a series of webinars. There was one earlier in the year, in June time, I think it was, on presenting your research, which was very useful. Today, we're talking about thinking beyond actually getting your first academic position. And the third one in the series, which is in December, is all about bullying, how to protect yourself and supporting your colleagues. I mean, ideally, in the 21st century, we shouldn't still be talking about bullying, but unfortunately, we all know it happens. So you can find more details of those events on the link at the bottom and book for them. And also, we've got a whole suite of previous webinars that we've done years before, from about 2018 onwards, all of which that you can access online now, recordings of those. So again, I'll give you links to find the others in this series at the end of this broadcast. So do keep your eye on Joliot-Curie. There's a lot going on, and there will be things going on next year, maybe not in the way we originally intended, but there will be.
Julie, sorry, can I just interrupt you?
Yes, of course you can.
I'm not sure about the rest of the people in the audience, but I can't see your slides moving.
You can't see
in case you're moving your slides.
I am.
It's on my screen. It's still on the first slide.
Mine is saying agenda now.
So I'm not sure about anyone else in the room, but I can't see them.
Would anybody like to put in a question or send me a comment? Can you see my slides or not? I can see them on my screen here. Let's have a look. Yes, Rianne is saying I can't see your slides moving. Anyone else would like to tell me whether they can or not? I think I'm just going to have to carry on and hope for the best because we are live at the moment. I'm sorry about that, Rianne. It might be you, it might be everyone else. If I get another message in, I will read that. What I will say is I can see mine here, and this session is being recorded. So if there is anything wrong with the slides moving on, you will be able to access the recording of this afterwards, and hopefully you will be able to see the slides there. So I haven't got anybody else coming in and telling me that they can or can't see. So I'm just going to have to carry on, I'm afraid. So what we're going to have a look at today is we're going to have a look at the implications of getting your first academic post. It's a great achievement, but what should you be thinking about? To help you to understand that thinking and planning beyond getting that post is essential if you're actually going to make a success of it. We're going to listen to Rianne on some hints and tips on what to expect, look at the challenges and sources of support around it, look at how to develop confidence in your first role, and we're going to look at practical advice on what you can actually do to help yourself, which is always important. And we're going to finish up by looking at the support that's available from the Royal Society of Chemistry, some of which is for members only, but there's a lot there which is available to everybody. So, okay, we're going to move on now. I'm sorry, Rianne. I can see your slide, and there's a great picture of you on the screen at the moment. Can you see the slide moving now?
No, I can't, but I've opened my own at the side, so I'll so I can see my own slides.
Okay, right. We'll carry on regardless. I haven't had any other messages coming in, so I'm assuming everyone else can see. I'm sorry about that, Rianne. I don't know what's happened.
That's okay.
Okay, so Rianne, we're going to talk a bit about you now. You know, for many postdocs, obviously the goal is, of course, to land that first academic position, but it's sometimes true to say be careful what you wish for. So we're going to explore that journey and think about why it's important to think about what happens after you land the role. So Rianne, can you tell us the story of how you landed your first permanent position and how did the opportunity come about?
Okay, so just kind of because I have the information already on the slides, and if Julie is okay to flick through them, I'll just give you a bit of a brief tour of what my career has been so far. So it's been relatively short in comparison to maybe some of the other lecturers. So I only did my MChem degree and PhD at Leeds between 2006 to 2014. And then I only did one postdoc. So I had, so this would actually say 2015. So just between 2014 and 15, I worked as a postdoc with Professor Polly Arnold at the University of Edinburgh. And then I actually did some traveling to try and figure out what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I actually took a lot of time planning my route into industry, because that's where I thought that I wanted to be. So I had a lot of applications put in for industry. And it was actually only during the time when I was doing some free postdoc work at the University of Leeds and between my travels that I actually realized that I wanted to not necessarily be an academic straight away, but at least going back into more postdocs. So this leads me on to my first academic position. So during my kind of applications for my postdocs, I applied for maybe about 15 roles as a postdoc. And I think I had 3 interviews maybe, and I only got 1 acceptance. But during this acceptance, I found this job role as a lecturer of bioinorganic chemistry. And this was at the University of Bradford. So what they were actually asking for was a minimum of 2 years of postdoc. And I'd only had 13 months in Polly's group up in Edinburgh, but I'd done some additional work at the University of Leeds, even though this was free of charge. I'd spent a lot of my time when I was unemployed, kind of going back to Leeds University and working on some additional projects. I kind of kept myself, you know, in a relatively academic role. So I thought maybe I'll just apply for it and see what happens. So I applied for this job as a lecturer of bioinorganic chemistry, and to my surprise, I managed to get myself not straight away in interviews. So as far as I'm aware from the staff there was about 175 applicants for this job. So there was 2 job roles going at the time. There was a lecturer in bioinorganic chemistry and a lecturer in polymer chemistry. And so, yeah, I put in my application and just hoped for the best. And it wasn't typical for anyone to get that far in a first role. So I was there when I went actually to the interview stage. I sat next to someone who had actually 12 interviews for a lecturer position. And unfortunately still didn't get past that one, so they weren't employed at Bradford either. So they were obviously then going on probably to their 13th and 14th interview. So it's not common to get, so I was very lucky actually. So in terms of like my route to get there, it was relatively simple, I think, in comparison to most people's. I just think it was very much the right place at the right time. And I think what helped me get there actually was putting all my efforts into looking for an academic position. So I think I spread myself before that quite thin. I was applying for majority of industry positions and maybe occasional postdoctoral positions, but I never really concentrated myself into academia. So I think that's was the main thing that helped me getting this first academic position, was putting all my efforts into looking for that role. So I think if you really want it, you have to put all your efforts into that role. And so yeah, I was lucky enough to land my first position at the University of Bradford, and I started there in 2016 as a lecturer in chemistry. Sorry, did you ask me? So I can't remember what else you asked me, Julie, at the start of that question. So
yeah, just to take us through your career journey, really. Yeah. So your first academic position was at the University of Bradford. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so during that time at Bradford, I actually I had a lot of opportunities to network, and I think we'll get onto that maybe in my later slides, is networking. But kind of finding people in other universities and things to apply for was the best advice I was given from my mentors. And I tried to get out of the university as much as I could, so attending conferences and stuff. And this landed me a visiting professorship, actually, which is another thing not often do you get in a first academic position. I was a visiting professor at the University of Munich in Germany for 2 years. And during this time, I also did my teacher training qualifications. So I graduated in 2018 with a teaching qualification from Bradford. And during this time at Bradford, I mean, I had a great time there, and there was I think we'll touch a little bit on the actual story of my time there.
Sure.
But I wanted to kind of move on and see what I could find, and move into another academic role and see what the difference is. And maybe, they do say the grass is green on the other side, but you never know really until you try that. So I applied for another lecturership in 2019 at the University of East Anglia, where I currently am now. And so I started here in September last year, though I was still in Germany at the time. So I actually arrived here in January. It's been a really crazy year because I arrived in January, and unfortunately we had strike action in February and we went into lockdown in March.
Oh dear.
So I've not really, my second position I can't really comment that much on, I guess, at the moment, because I've not really been completely involved in the role. But I was very lucky this year, so I had a lot of time to do writing during this second academic position. And earlier this month, it was announced that I won a UKRI Future Leader fellowship. So this is going to now set me up for at least the next 4 years of research. So
that's a fantastic story. Yeah, well done. That's fairly new news, I think, and in a year when people are finding life and work generally very difficult, that's fantastic news for you. So well done. Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting story, particularly how you got your first academic position. Would you say that there was anything that you'd particularly pinpoint as a pivotal moment in landing that first permanent role?
So I think there was nothing, as I've kind of touched on, I don't think there was anything really pivotal apart from just putting all my resources into applying for academic positions and not spreading myself too thinly. And I think keeping within academia. So yes, I went out and I did a little bit of traveling and saw some of the world, but I still came back and I went, unfortunately it was free and I didn't get paid when I went back to Leeds University, but I knew that it was, I lived very close by actually, so it wasn't a huge task for me to nip into the university occasionally. I had a very good mentor there. So Patrick McGowan was my PhD supervisor. And he was very keen on letting me back into the department and work there and do some of my own research, which was really nice. So that gave me kind of my own preliminary data, and I started already to nurture my own ideas. So I think the pivotal point is having good mentors and having good people to talk to. And he was really the key point in me getting I think, my first academic position, because he allowed me the chance to still keep my research going. And I think that's the main thing I can say, is that even if you have time out, still trying to keep on top of attending conferences when you can, publications and stuff when you can. I think keeping inside academia, if that's what you really want, is the best thing you can do. And I think before that, I was, like say, spreading myself thin, and I was applying for, I think I applied for about 50, 60 industry positions and only 15 postdocs. And it was only when I put my full concentration into academia was I successful.
Yeah, no, I think there's an important message there. You know, it's very often people don't really know what they want to do, you know, and sometimes an awful lot of time can be spent in making lots of different applications for different kinds of jobs. I would say to anybody listening, if any of this is striking very familiar to you, that you've applied for 50 jobs in industry and never heard anything, if you're an RSC member, then there is career support available for you. We can help you with applications, we can help you with CVs, and at the end of the broadcast, I'm going to show you how you can get in touch with us and encourage you to do that. So that's really interesting, Rianne. So it's great that you landed the job and the dream came true. But we're going to explore now why it's important to think beyond that heady moment, if you like. I'd like, if you would, could you tell us what happened next? You know, was it all as you anticipated, or were there some surprises to deal with?
No, it was the whole thing was a complete surprise.
Okay.
From the minute I walked through the door. So I think it's very, you're a little bit sheltered, I think, when you're both a PhD and postdoc, and you don't really see the life of a lecturer and what they do. And I think I was convinced in my own mind that I would just go in and I would carry on my own research, and I'd have money and time and PhD students to help me, because I'd come from relatively large groups, you know, that had maybe 10, 12 PhD students working in them. So I just had this assumption that when I walked in, that I would also be given these PhD students to work for me or work with me. And that was not the case. I mean, I only just got my first PhD student now as I've moved to the University of East Anglia. So I did the last 4 years before this working on my own. So I've had no one in my research group. And I think that was, for me, the most surprise, is that the kind of the support in terms of getting the research and the startup funds and stuff is quite low. And it does depend, obviously, on your faculty, what university you're at. And there is sometimes in different universities like small pots of money inside the university to apply for PhD studentships and things. But having that time right at the start of your career to, if you will get the ball rolling with the grant applications, it takes a long time. And unfortunately for me, in my first academic position, I started in the August of 2016, and I was teaching by September. And I'd never taught to a big class.
Wow.
I'd only ever done a tutorial or two as a postdoc, maybe with about 6 students, but standing there in front of a large lecture theatre without any real training was the most daunting thing I think I've ever done.
Right. Okay. So no money, thrown straight into teaching. This must have been a bit of a difficult moment for you, I think.
Yeah, and I mean it was like, because obviously the teaching, and depending on the size of your department, obviously, that you would go into, or inorganic section there was very small, and therefore the teaching becomes much higher for the inorganic section. And so trying to balance that time was the hardest thing I think I had. I have to admit, and people aren't really going to like it, the work-life balance was not great. It's something I don't obviously advocate, that you shouldn't, you should sacrifice your life for your work, and that I don't believe in that. But it becomes that way because if you're driven as well to get your research out and your grants put in, you're naturally driven to work hard. And if that means that you're not finishing your teaching till 5 p.m, I was going in the evenings to try and get these results because I didn't have anyone working in the lab 9 to 5 for me. So I was going in my evenings or weekends to try and make up, if you will, for lost time that I thought it was. So trying to get that balance between having a very high teach load at the start. And as I say, this is very different depending on your university. So my second academic position is very different, where I have a much lower teach load and I have more time to be in the lab and research. But I think that's what I can say about your, I mean, obviously you don't often have a choice. And I think anyone who gets their first academic position, like I did, would probably take it without really thinking of these things.
Yes,
because you want to get on the ladder. You want to get that first step onto the ladder of academia. So you will take probably whatever is offered to you. And I think that's the hard thing, is trying to manage the expectations of what the university want you to do in terms of teaching, but what you want personally in terms of your, your research and growth. So that was probably the most surprising thing that I had.
Right, yes, and very surprising, I would think, as well. I mean, definitely some challenges there. And we've got some things to consider on the slide now that you'd like to point out to people. You've already mentioned the work-life balance thing, but there were definitely some challenges in your first academic position. So how did you personally deal with those challenges?
So I think the good thing about my position is that when I first started, there was a few of us started all at the same time. So we had four or five new members of staff all start at the same time as me. So we were all going through the same thing together. So I think keeping in contact with your peers and listening to each other was great. And that was very helpful. But I think trying to speak to people outside of your faculty, because I think I got quite sucked into what was expected in my faculty, and I didn't see what other people were up to. So my mentors, and I made sure that I had mentors in other universities, people who I'd met along the way during my PhD and postdoc. And I think having somebody else to talk to who's outside, who has a, not a direct involvement in your role or your university is key, because they can really give you a different perspective on whether something really is necessary. Because I think that's the problem is when you're first just starting your academic position like I was, you find it very hard to say no. And I said yes to everything.
Yeah, of course.
Because I thought that that's what I had to do. So I just said yes to absolutely everything that people asked me to do. And then only by speaking to the people did I realize that, they said, oh, well, you shouldn't be really taking on that much. That's not, good for a first academic position. So having them people to talk to and mentors and peers to put in places was really helpful. But I think kind of talking back to not having as much startup funds and PhD students and stuff helping out, lecturers do get an amount of money given to you for your project students. So I think the best advice I can give is to put a lot of effort, if you can, into designing these projects, because like I said, they do come with money for consumables. So it's a way for you to have somebody working with you and for you on projects where you can get some money in. So I think having well-designed projects for BSc and master's students was key for me. Right. But I think as well, we talk a little bit further. Most of my input really has come from my networking, which I think is very hard to do. And maybe we'll come on to it a bit later, but the networking should be fun. And it usually is fun, but I think it's very hard for new people to kind of start talking to other professors and lecturers at, events and conferences and seminars. It's very hard, especially during COVID times now, because you don't get to meet people face to face.
It's doubly difficult now, isn't it? Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's always been nice after conferences to have that kind of drinks and poster sessions where you can actually talk, and it's very hard to do that now. So I think anyone who's wanting to start an academic career now, it's even harder than I had it a few years ago. But it is something that you still should do, and even if that's networking with people through people that you know. So quite often your mentors can really give you hints or connections to other people that they know, and that's been really helpful in me for my academic career, at least, is the networking and outreach that I've done.
That's
but there's
really
a lot to consider. There's a lot. I mean, the role is, I think what people forget is the role for a lecturer is huge. So you not only have your teaching side of things, but you are a mentor yourself. So you start to mentor undergraduate students, and it's very hard to learn these things. You don't get taught how to be a good mentor. So obviously the MRSC, and maybe Jolio will kind of touch on that, do have mentors and stuff in place, but starting an academic career and trying to be someone's mentor, trying to mentor, I think I had 12 students to mentor in my first few weeks at Bradford. And I had no idea how to do it. So learning these things, I think I learned from experience. So I learned from my mentors. So I took on what my mentors would give me in terms of advice and use that to help my mentoring. But the role of a lecturer is very wide and very spread. And that's important to remember. But the most thing is it should be fun. Yes. And we do science because it's fun. Yes. So you have to make sure you have time for yourself and you're doing fun things, because the workloads can be very high.
Yeah, Yeah, I understand that completely. Yes, and you're quite right there, Rianne. You know, I think mentoring in all walks of careers is very important, and you know, never more so than for early career academics. And it's great if you can find mentors amongst your own network. You know, Rianne has, and that's great. But I know for some of you listening, it might be more difficult, and particularly in these COVID times when it is very difficult to meet other people. If you feel that having a mentor would help you, then the RSC does have an independent mentoring scheme where we can offer you somebody who has got some shared experiences with you, but they're at arm's length from you, if you like, you know, so they're independent, they're trained, and we don't pay them. They're just there to help you make the right decision for yourself. So I will show you where you can find information about that a bit later on in the broadcast. But that's really interesting, Rianne. I mean, you know, looking at that, so you would say, from what I'm gathering, you would say that your experience at Bradford was not necessarily a typical experience. So if anyone's listening to this and feeling alarmed, I mean, how can anyone listening actually prepare for the types of challenges that you've just described?
I think the preparation is probably knowing what you're getting into. So really understanding what the role of a lecturer is. And maybe that was my naivety when I started. I mean, I don't come from an academic background anyway, so I was the first person to go to university, and I'm the only person in my entire family who has a PhD. So
really?
I didn't have them. Wow. Yeah, so I had nobody to speak to about these types of things. And only when I was a master's student did I even understand what a PhD was. Nobody kind of explained these things to me. So I think I've always gone into it a bit naive, and I didn't really understand what a lecturer did. And I just made up my own assumptions. So I think getting as much information as you can from the people around you, from your own lecturers, from your own PhD or postdoc supervisors, about what their role is and how much is kind of split in terms of their teaching and their outreach, and that, because you have a lot of administration roles. And I think being realistic about what you're letting yourself in for is probably the key thing. And like I say, Bradford wasn't probably the most typical, and that was just because we had a small department.
Yeah.
So, you know, there was only, maybe before I started, I think 10 or 12 people in the department. So when a department's very small, it's natural that the administration and teaching is going to be a lot higher. So I think you just have to prepare yourself of what kind of jobs you're going in for, and have a look at the universities that you're applying to. So if you did manage to get an interview, you already know and you're already prepared for kind of what's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah, okay. No, that's very good advice. And you know, you wanted to mention something about, you know, in terms of support, sort of breaking down your job role and getting support. You know, a first academic position I think we've got from you now isn't just one thing, is it? There are lots of different strands in that. So I know you wanted to talk about getting help and guidance on teaching is quite important. You know, how did you deal with that, and how much did it help you?
Yeah, so as I said, the teaching, I mean, I think most universities, within at least the first year of your placement there, you will start a certificate of higher education or a master's in higher education. So you are put onto these courses, and you do meet up with each other and have people observe your teaching. But I think the most important thing I did when I started was I went to observe other people's teaching, because I didn't know really how to be a teacher. And it's okay to sit in these courses and listen, but it's a very different story when you stand up there and start to do it yourself. And we'll see now, like obviously teaching's changing a lot now as well, because we're doing a lot of our teaching online. So the traditional teaching that you do stood at a whiteboard or with presentations can't just be the only teaching we do now. There's a lot of, you know, technology enhanced learning that we have to look at, and different, you know, modes of teaching. And even now, even though I've been doing it 4 years, there's a lot of new things that I don't know, and I'm having to do a lot of reading and having to look at a lot of literature in terms of teaching. So I think trying to get the experience, even if you're, like say, a postdoc now, a PhD or something, trying to get the experience now of watching lectures or sitting in on lectures and seeing how people lecture will prepare you for what comes. And having a look at kind of what kind of teaching style that you would like. So I know that I'm quite, I like active type learning. I like doing quizzes, and I'm very kind of, I like them to be fun. I don't like to stand there in a board with a clicker. So that was the way I wanted to teach. So I had to design or redesign. So, you know, because I did my courses from scratch when I started at Bradford. So the material didn't exist. So that was a good thing. I got to create my material because it was a new degree program. I got to make my own material how I wanted it to be done. I think the hardest thing sometimes if you're taking over someone's teaching, you get given their lecture slides and you don't know what to do with them apart from stand there and present it.
I can understand that. There's nothing worse than having to give somebody else's presentation, isn't there? It doesn't work. Yeah.
No, and I think kind of learning how your own teaching style is, and that can only be done, I think, by watching other people or getting an understanding of what kind of teaching methods are available.
Yeah.
And putting it into practice is a really hard thing. So I think if you can start already doing, like as a postdoc, doing tutorials or giving it, what I did with my visiting postdoc who was at Bradford, I had them for 6 months there. I gave them a couple of my lectures to do. So I sat in on the lectures, but I gave them an opportunity to deliver some of my lecture courses.
Okay.
So they could get some experience already. So small lecture courses. So it may be something that you can do. I mean, every university is different, but if you can kind of start giving these small presentations, and I think if you do a lot of outreach as well, that helps.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of getting, I think just preparing yourself to present is all I can really say, is doing a lot of presentation work.
Yeah, I think what's coming across, Rianne, in everything that you've said so far is quite clearly you take a very active and proactive stance to all of this. You don't wait for people to come and tell you what to do or how to teach or how to get an academic position. You've actually gone out there and done it for yourself, which is why I think you're a great person to be talking to us today. I think the more responsibility people can take for their own development, then, the more, there's no magic formula for success. But I think the more proactive you are, the more you're prepared to say, well, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how this works, so I'm going to go and find out, or I'm going to watch other people doing it. That kind of attitude really does, whatever career you go into, that kind of attitude does stand you in good stead. And I think that's what's coming out loud and clear from what you're saying, Rianne. You have faced challenges. Of course you have, but you haven't sat there. Well, maybe you have sat there sometimes and felt a bit deflated, but
I think I have.
You knew what you wanted to do, and you've picked yourself up and got on with it, which is I think is fantastic. And everybody listening can take a lesson from that, I think. So it's not all about challenges, though. I mean, from your experience, you obviously understand a lot more about the academic environment now and how to progress your career in academia. And you must be able to highlight skills and confidence that you've developed that have helped you move forward. So we'll be more positive now. We'll stop talking about the challenges and we'll talk about the way forward.
Yeah. So I think, well, I mean, if I kind of take myself back to when I was a student, when I was a master's student, I pretty much avoided every course that I could possible that had any presentation skills in.
Okay.
So if we got an option to choose modules, I would purposely choose modules where I didn't have to present, because I was so nervous at presenting. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And it wasn't that something clicked. I think just kind of putting yourself out there and, like say, having this inability to say no has been helpful for me, because if people ask me, Rianne, could you go out and do a school talk, or could you do a school visit? Kind of putting myself out there has been very helpful for me, and it's boosted my confidence a lot. I mean, I still probably would say that I have negative moments and imposter syndrome quite a lot. I think a lot of academics do, but I think just putting yourself out there and always asking for people for feedback, even if that's negative. So I'm constantly asking both my peers and my students to give me feedback on how it went, so I can improve. And as you've just touched on before, like this kind of, you'll find that if you start your academic career, you're asked all the time to look at your professional development plans. How are you going to develop, within your probation period, for example, 3 or 5 year time? And you have to constantly be assessing these things. And one of mine was presentation. And it's quite hard to say that, you're sometimes afraid of presenting when you're a lecturer. And a lecturer is known to present all the time. So I think addressing your skills, and it's something like, for example, this talk, I think if you'd have asked me at the start 4 years ago, I would never have given this talk. I would never have done a webinar. I tried to avoid it as much as I could. I tried to keep myself in the background because I just wanted to do my research. I liked to just be in the lab doing research.
Yeah.
But presenting and giving talks and being face to face with people and networking is a huge part of being a lecturer. And kind of knowing what your weaknesses are and owning your weaknesses and improving them as much as you can is the best thing you can do. So I think, addressing your professional development constantly, and I review mine usually all the time, and the university will ask you to do that anyway, but I do mine actively on my own. I always look at things that I can improve on. sign up for courses. I signed up for a course a couple of weeks ago on talking to the public, because my research is very public orientated. So I do a lot of cancer research work. So I know at some point I'm going to have to not only deliver my information to scientists, I'm going to have to deliver it to, you know, I would say normal people. I guess we're all normal, but people, you know, people who are, you need to present to, lay summaries to.
Yes.
And that was a skill that I didn't have, and it's a very good skill to have. So I think, you know, there's a lot of help around, not just from the RSC. There is other routes around. So finding the best experiences you can is helpful for your development.
Yeah, no, and I think owning that, you're quite right. You know, we can all bury our heads in the sand and just think, well, I'm good at this part of my job, so I'm just going to keep doing that and nothing else. But really, longer term, that's not going to make for, you know, a progressive career path for you. Everybody wants to move forward and get somewhere. And I think it's only by, as you say, owning your, yes, do own your weaknesses, but also own your skills. You know, it's very easy to focus too much on things that you know that you could improve on and not see your skills for what they are, and be a bit diffident in, you know, letting people know what you're capable of doing and what you can do for them. So I think Rianne's absolutely right. You know, taking that balanced view of your professional development, you know, take one step back. It's not about you as a person, it's about developing as a professional. And I think, you know, there is definitely help and support there if you're an RSC member, from the RSC, as well as probably from your institution and from your friends and your peers and people who you know through your professional life already. But if you feel you haven't got that support, you know, it is available through the RSC, so do get in touch with us. That particular point that you raised about presenting, Rianne, is just so, I won't say common, I don't like that word necessarily, but, you know, a lot of people suffer from that, the whole imposter syndrome thing, particularly, as you say, you know, if you don't come from a background where everybody's been a university lecturer and that kind of thing, sometimes it takes longer for the confidence to develop. But I think there are people there who can help you. There are certainly resources there that can help you. And owning up to that and just thinking, I don't like presenting, so what can I do about it? Outreach is a great idea. If you're an RSC member, there are ways that you can get involved in RSC outreach, which will help you hone your communication skills and your people skills. Great thing to put on a CV. It's not only about what you do, it's about how you do it too. It's about how you work with other people. It's about how they view you. You know, what do they come to you for? Where are your real strengths? So it's owning all of those things. You know, own your strengths as well as the things that you need to develop on. That having been said, you know, I do know presentation skills and presenting to people is something that keeps a lot of people awake at night. So if that's you, then do have a look at the previous Joliot-Curie programme webinar that we did back in June, which was from two people, one of whom is a lecturer and one of whom is a postdoc at the moment, who both started out their careers being absolutely terrified of presenting, but they are now trying to help other people to do that. So there is support out there for you. Do have a listen to the webinar. If it still frightens you, then, you know, get in touch with us and we can maybe find a mentor for you or another way to help you. You're not on your own, is what I'm saying. You know, if you feel this weakness, then you can be pretty sure that lots of other people feel it too. Don't be afraid of that. Don't feel it's anything, you know, personally that's wrong or you know, not professional about you. It'd just be lack of experience. Okay. Well, this has been really useful, Rianne. I'm going to ask one last thing from Rianne now, and while she answers, I would invite you, those of you who are logged in, if you'd like to ask any questions of Rianne or of me about RSC Career Support Services or whatever, while Rianne's answering this last question, then do feel free to type it into your questions box here, and then when Rianne's finished her answer, I will be able to look at those questions and put some of those to her. So feel free to do that. Rianne, if you had one piece of advice then to offer someone who's actively seeking their first academic post, what would it be?
Okay, so obviously I do have a lot of different ones. So if I was to kind of hone this down into one single, I think it's the writing of your application, because I think a lot of academics and researchers can usually sell themselves very well at interviews because the passion comes through at the interviews. And so I think the biggest hurdle is to get the interview in the first place. And so I think I would spend, if I was going back myself and applying for a job as a postdoc to get an academic position, was to seek help in application writing. And I think spending a lot of time to make sure that your CV and your cover letter aren't just something generic that you send to every single position. and really spend a lot of time looking at the role that you're applying for, because the university roles, they usually give a description of what they expect from you, really tuning your cover letter and your CVs to that. And I think that was the biggest help for me. So I think that's what helped me get my position. I sent my CV and cover letter to a lot of my my peers and my friends, even if they weren't in academia, and asked them, you know, would they hire me? And kind of following that, not just writing the CV, but getting help with mock interviews, having someone help prepare you for the interviews and the questions was huge. Because I mean, like I said, I was lucky to get mine on the very first go, but the questions that I got asked at a lecturer interview were very different to any questions I'd been asked at a postdoc or an industry interview. So I think having someone who's already been through that and getting some advice on the questions that are likely going to be asked at lecturer level is very important. So I think, so that's my piece of advice really, is to make sure your application is solid for each job that you apply for. Yeah. And if you're lucky enough to get the interview, prepare. There's nothing, you know, prepare and prepare and prepare. As many mock interviews as you can with different, you know, variety of people.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Okay, I'm looking at the questions now, and I can see that there obviously has been a problem with the slides moving on. What I'm going to suggest is that when I put this webinar up onto our YouTube channel, I will put the slides up with it. I don't know what's happened here. It must be some kind of technical glitch, because I can see them moving here, and I'm not doing anything different from how I would normally do this, but for some reason it just seems it's not working. So what I'm going to suggest is that I will put this up on YouTube, and I will try to put the slide presentation up alongside it, so that you can see both together. I hope that's okay. I'm sorry, I can't explain what's gone wrong here. I've never had this happen before, and because we're live, there's not an awful lot I could do about it. So many apologies. I hope you've got a lot from listening anyway. And as I say, I will try to ensure that the slide presentation does go up on with the recording on YouTube. Okay, so we have got a few questions coming in. Someone is saying, thank you, it's nice to hear someone else's experiences, and I can resonate with a lot of what you've said. And what was the course that you mentioned on public speaking? Could you tell us about that one again, Rianne?
Yes, so this course was, so I'm a member of the Biochemical Society. So it was actually run through the Biochemical Society. So okay. I think so. They might be running another one. So I think if you probably check onto their website,
okay,
there might be some more coming up. So I know I think you can attend it if you're not a member. But I think if you're a member, I think there's a small fee if you're not a member, and if you are, then you can attend it for free. Okay. So the membership for there is relative. I think it's only about £47 for the year I pay for Biochemical Society membership. So then it's a very good another way. I mean, I know we're talking here for the RSC, but it also is these other memberships are another way of getting additional support for things like public speaking and presentations.
Okay, right, that's great. Yes, the same person has just said thank you very much. So that's obviously a good answer. Now, there's another one that's coming that's more of a comment, not a particularly positive comment either. And I might want to say something about that. Someone has said, can anyone suggest how universities might change the structure of the industry to support new academics, as it's horrible and everyone seems to just shrug it off as if that is okay? So what would you say to that, Rianne? Do you think there are cultural problems, or is it down to the individual? Have you got any comments on that at all?
I think it really is down to, because obviously I'm now in my second position, and it does change from different institutes. So I think it really depends on the environment that you're in. And there is a lot of expectation. I think that's maybe what this person's trying to get at, is the expectations are very high. So it almost feels like you've got your probation period of 3 years or so to kind of prove yourself worthy to be there. And I think that's hard if you've got somewhere that's got high teaching. So like I say, I don't really think so. I've had a different experience here at UEA. So my teaching is very manageable. I do smaller number of courses and just tutorials. So I have a lot more time to put the effort in. And I also won a PhD studentship internally from an internal program that we have. So I have someone in helping now. And there is still that pressure from new academics, but I think for me it feels much lower. Okay. And that's, I think, what gave me the time and the space mentally to write the fellowship that I had. that I was successful at. So I think it depends, and I don't think it's probably fair to say that all institutes are bad at supporting new academics. But there is generally a lot of pressure, and I think that is all the way through academia. There's pressure all the way through, because you have such a, you have to have very good teaching and no student complaints from your teaching, but you have to be seen to be constantly progressing. And I think it's hard to progress and keep the teaching and everything and the administration. You're spread very thinly, and I don't know. I'm not sure how that can be changed. I think that was the question, weren't it? Is can this be changed? I'm not really. I'm not sure really it can. I think it should, and there shouldn't be pressure from any institute. We are there to, as long as your teaching is very good and you're doing, what you love, and the university is progressing as a whole, there shouldn't be pressure on certain individuals.
And I think it's fair to say as well, I mean, it's not, it's not solely a problem in academia. We hear from people in their first positions in industry who are really surprised at how much pressure they find themselves under. So I think a lot of it comes back to what you were talking about earlier, Rianne, in that having that good support network around you to help you deal with the pressure better. And again, if you're an RSC member, do talk to us if you're feeling like that, because there are ways that we can maybe support you, networks that you can join sort of outside of your institution that might give you that bit of perspective. You can apply to have a mentor through us and all of those sorts of things. So I don't think I think it'd be fair to say, wouldn't it, Rianne, that nobody can do this entirely on their own. You do need a network of people around you, some of who are going to support you in your work, some of who are just going to take you out and make you laugh, because the pressure can get to all of us at times. I think it's fair to say.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's important. What you just said is having somebody in kind of each area of your life. Like I have people who I talk to who are my friends but have no interest in academia. Just having someone that you can speak to about all areas has been important.
That's right. I think that's very sound advice. Well, and for the person who put that comment there, I'm sorry to hear that you're going through that. And our third webinar this year, our third Joliot-Curie webinar in December, as I said at the beginning, is all about the subject of bullying in the workplace. And it might be helpful for you if you're the person who put that comment up to join us on the 2nd of December and have a listen to some strategies that other people have put in place to cope with this kind of thing. It's not a pleasant subject, but we can't deny that some people do feel under a tremendous amount of pressure. But thinking about where you can get your support from, I think, is really important.
Yeah, just to touch on that, sorry, as well. I think what I kind of mentioned at the start, having a realistic idea of what you should be doing is something that you need as well. And I think that kind of pressure, I think when you're a new person in the department, it's very easy, I think, for some people to kind of throw everything to you. Or they're new in the department, so we'll just give them everything. And I think having a realistic idea of what you should be saying yes to and what you can say no to was something that I had to learn.
Very good.
And I think having people to speak to outside of your department is important, because they will realistically tell you, actually, you shouldn't be doing that. That's far too much work for a new person.
You're not necessarily, you don't necessarily know that at the time, do you? So to have somebody who does know backing you up in that way, it all helps to develop your own assertiveness skills as well, and your powers of deciding what's it's your confidence, really, isn't it? So I agree completely. Just talk to as many people as possible, I think, and learn from their experiences. Okay, we haven't got any more questions coming in now. So I did want to move on a little bit to things that the RSC can do to support you. I mean, the RSC, I've touched on it, and I'm sure Rianne belongs to some of these. We have got several networks that you can belong to. We have got a whole series of scientifically orientated networks. We've got divisions and interest groups that you can join. We have an early career network. And of course, we would normally have quite a wide suite of conferences now. Not many of those are happening at the moment, but we are trying to get a bit savvier about that, and a lot of stuff is going online now. So do have a look at our website, which is www.rsc.org. You'll find networks there under membership and professional community, and you'll find conferences under our events tab. So do keep a good look on, keep a watch out on those, and do join in. with anything that interests you, and even things that you may be just on the margin for, because what you're doing this for really is to raise your profile and get to know people that you wouldn't normally get the chance to meet. And sometimes just a stray remark or a stray, a contact to somebody new can sometimes spark off a whole lot of new possibilities for you. So yeah, if you're an RSC member, this is all part of your membership deal. So I would say get your money's worth out of us. In some ways, I suppose the only good thing about the COVID situation is the fact that conferences have gone online. So maybe they're a bit more accessible to you. Perhaps the overall experience, as you mentioned earlier on, Rianne, of being able to chat to people afterwards and go for a coffee with them isn't going to happen. But at least, maybe you'll get the chance to go to some events that would have been too far away for you, or you couldn't spare the time to go, or were going to be too expensive. You might find that it does open up, more events that are possible for you. So do have a look and sign up for any that seem to be helpful for you. We also have got, if you're looking at RSC funding, for example, we have got funding for travel and research, and small grants for research, not the massive ones, but things that might help you buy equipment and so forth. And that's all under our awards and funding tab on our website. Again, I'm sorry you can't see the slides. Come back and have a look. If you want to have the slides, I would say if you're listening and you want to have a copy of the slides for yourself, then do email careers@mrsc.org and just say, please send me the slides, and I will send them through to you. Okay. It's also worth mentioning that we do have the Chemist Community Fund, which is there specifically to help RSC members who are going through difficult times, and they're being particularly active at the moment in these COVID days. They have got some grants available, carers grants, for example, to allow you to do things if you have caring responsibilities. They are offering all sorts of counselling and support for people who are finding the whole COVID and lockdown situation very difficult. So do get in touch with them. Again, you'll find them under membership and professional community on our website. So all of these things, they're part of your membership package, so do take advantage of them. I've already mentioned the Joliot-Curie programme, the webinars that we've had this year, presenting your research. You'll find that online. Got your first academic position, what next is today's, and we will be putting that up too. And on the 2nd of December, we're having bullying, protect yourself and support your colleagues, and you can find all of those and sign up for the third one in the series from our events page. Just a last word about the RSC Career and Professional Development Services. That's the team that I belong to, and we provide support for members at all career stages. We provide one-to-one consultations. If you're an AMRSC, an MRSC or an FRSC, you can actually have a one-to-one consultation with us, and that can happen by phone or Zoom or Skype at the moment. We can provide guidance on career planning, good applications. As Rianne said, you have to tailor your applications. We can help you to do that. Support for your professional development. You can find out more about our mentoring scheme and networking, and you'll find us at www.rsc.org/careers, or drop us an email, as I said, very simple, careers@rsc.org. That's really all I had to say for now. I mean, I think it's been a fascinating exploration, and how sometimes, how you think things turn out. It may take the route that you saw from A to B, might have to go through X, Y, and Z before you get there. But I think it's been fantastic to hear Rianne's story today, and just to hear about her sort of proactive approach to all this has helped her to really move along from what could have been quite a difficult start. So we're very grateful to you, Rianne. Have you got anything, any last observations you'd like to make before we finish?
No, not really. I just wanted to kind of add, and if you do send the slides out, there's some information about where to find me on one of the slides, but I don't have my email address on there. So if anyone does want to drop me an email, I'm more than happy to answer questions by email. So it's just r.lord@uea.ac.uk. And I'm happy if you want to discuss a few more things by email, that's completely fine.
Oh, that's fine. That's fantastic. Yes. Okay. So I would encourage you. Thanks very much for listening. I am sorry about the slides. I can't say that enough. I really don't know what's happened here. But if you're listening and you want a copy of the slides, do email careers@rsc.org and just say, can you send us a copy of the Joliot-Curie slides, please? And I will make sure you get those. And I'll get them put up on the YouTube channel somehow. I'm not quite sure how, but leave that to me. Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much, Rianne. And thank you very much to everybody who's been listening today. I hope it's been helpful for you. And of course, certainly for me, good luck with whatever it is you want to do. Do keep in touch if you're an RSC member. We're always happy to hear from you. You just need to email careers@rsc.org. Okay, so Rianne, would you like to say goodbye to everybody? And then I think we're done for today.
Yep, thank you all and bye. Good luck with your applications.
Okay, yeah, and the same from me. Good luck to everybody with whatever it is you decide to do, and do keep in touch with us if it would be helpful. So thanks very much, Rianne. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll say goodbye for now.